good to have you with us. A new story from the Amhara region of Ethiopia where drone strikes have been conducted on Fano fighters. How many have been killed, in which towns these drone strikes were conducted, and importantly, which airports are being used. If you remember, when drone strikes were conducted on Bure back then I reported that maybe Bishoftu Air Base was being used from where these drones were being controlled. And I said back then, if you remember, it was difficult to carry out drone strikes in Gondar and in Gojam, especially in Gondar. Now in Gojam, drone strikes are being conducted. Question is, which airport is being used? On which airport ground control station of these drones is based? We'll try to analyze the situation and who have been killed, Fano fighters or civilians. Firstly, in West Gojam, in at least one town today, drone strikes were conducted. Some sources say in 2 towns and some say in 1 town. Most confirm drone strikes in 1 town, Finote Silam. Finote Silam is in West Gojam, the town under the control of Fano fighters for days. And around 48 hours ago, Fano fighters stormed a prison. They released hundreds of prisoners from Finote Silam prison. Reports about drone strikes in 2 towns, Finote Silam and Bure. Bure situated to the north and west of Finote Silam. Bure, very strategic town, again under Fano fighters' control for several days. Some sources say twin drone strikes on Bure and Finote Silam. Others say drone strikes only on Finote Silam. In Finote Silam, drone strike was conducted in the center of the city where Fano fighters were moving around. They were in a vehicle when drone strikes were conducted. Question is, what is the target? What was the target? Because if we recall a bit about Tigray war and drone strikes on Ola. Back then, the 2 groups, Ola and Tigray Defense Force, used to say that drone strikes were being conducted against civilians, that civilians were being massacred through drone strikes. And it has been a consistent position of Tigray since the start of war that drone strikes were against civilians. Ola says the same too. Drone strikes were conducted against Ola too in Oromia. But my position from day one is that drone strikes target armed groups. Sometimes civilians die too in collateral damage. Sometimes drone strikes are not precise. But drone strikes are not on civilians. Drone strikes were not on civilians in Tigray, not on civilians in Oromia, not on civilians in Amhara too now. But you'll see Amhara news outlets spreading the propaganda that civilians are being targeted. Yes, there could be a drone strike which is not precise. Civilians could be killed. It does not mean that civilians are being targeted. So, drone strikes were on Fano fighters. In Finote Silam, reportedly, the target was a convoy of vehicles of Fano fighters. And the drone strike in Finote Silam was very precise. That is what is being confirmed by people from the ground. The bomb, the ammunition precisely hit the vehicle which was carrying Fano fighters. It is difficult, by the way, to distinguish between Fano fighters and civilians. When Fano fighters say they have public support, it means that those people who support Fano fighters, who accompany them, they also become targets. But in Finote Silam, reportedly, target was Fano fighters. Same is the case with Bure. Now, which type of drone, which types of drones are being used by Ethiopian Air Force, and which airport is being used? Very important question is which airport is being used. Type of drone can be established if from the spot where drone strike was conducted, someone share pictures of debris. Because when bombs are fired from drones and bombs hit people, vehicle on the ground, remnants of munition are scattered. And these remnants of munitions have evidence of which types of drones are in operation. Because if you remember, in Tigray, TB2 drone strikes were conducted, and MAML munitions used by TB2 drones, remnants of this munition were found on the spot where drone strikes were conducted. Let's hope that someone from the area collects remnants of the munition and shares pictures. That will give us that will make us easy, make it easy for us to understand which type of drone being used. But most probably, I think TB2s, because drone strikes very precise. TB2s are known for these precision strikes. TB2s or wing longs, Ethiopia has only two options. Muhajir 6 were grounded reportedly, Iranian drones. Ethiopia purchased them, but Muhajir 6 were not very precise. Then Ethiopia purchased wing long, and then lastly TB2s. TB2s proved very effective, Turkish TB2s. They were very precise. I think same could be here in Amhara, like we saw in Tigray. The TB2s were used very effectively and extensively in Tigray. Same is happening here in Amhara, it seems. Again, confirmation can be made through analysis of the spot where the drone strike was conducted. Very importantly, which airport is being used? Can Ethiopian government afford to deploy drones ground control station at any airport in the Amhara region? I don't think so. I don't think that Ethiopian government in present circumstances will deploy any a drones ground control station GCS to any airport in the Amhara region. Though all airports are under government control now, still Fano fighters can storm the airports. So I personally think that it's, I don't think the government has deployed ground control stations in Amhara. If not in Amhara, then on which airport or in which area these ground control stations have been deployed? Well, when Debre Birhan was hit, drone strikes were from Bishoftu. That is what we analyzed back then. Now, when Gojam is being hit, which could be the airport where GCS is deployed? Asosa to the west, Addis Ababa to the south and east, Nakamte to the south and west, to the south you can say, and Mindi to a little to the south and west. So which of these airports could be hosting ground control stations? Asosa to Finotisilam distance is around 188 miles, around. Addis Ababa to Finote, around 160 miles. Mindi to Finotisilam, again, around 160. Nakamte to Finotisilam is the shortest distance. All these cities have airports: Nakamte, Mindi, Addis Ababa, Asosa. it seems the shortest distance between the place where drone strike was conducted and an airport is Nakamte. Nakamte is in East Valaga. So far, it seems that Ethiopian government, Ethiopian military is using Nakamte airport. On this airport, ground control station of the drones have been stationed. When drone strikes were conducted against Ola fighters, GCS were not in Valaga. GCS were in Asosa, in Benishangal Gumri region, Asosa, because Valaga was not safe for deployment of GCS of drones. That is why from Asosa, drone strikes were conducted in Valaga and I think in West Shore too on Ola fighters. Now, when drone strikes are being conducted in Amhara, GCS are not in Amhara. A common range of these combat drones around 200 kilometers. Drone range can be enhanced too, but you need to set up communication towers. It takes time. I don't think that Ethiopian military has set up communication towers. If towers have been set up, then Bishoftu Air Base can be used too. Towers somewhere on Oromiya-Amhara border. If towers have not been set up, it means that Valaga is being used. From Valaga, drone strikes are being conducted. GCS are in Valaga. And Fano fighters cannot do anything about that because they cannot enter Valaga. They are fighting to survive. They are defending themselves. And they have no defense against drone strikes. Tigray fighters had no defense against these drones. Tigray fighters had Zu-23-2 man-pads. These Fano fighters have captured a few Zu-23-2s, no man-pads. So these Zu-23-2 man-pads are not effective against drones. Drones fly very high. So you cannot hit them from the ground. If they're flying from Valaga and flying at a very high altitude, it means you cannot hit them from the ground from using Zu-23-2 anti-aircraft guns. So Fano fighters have no defense. KDF had no defense too. Ola no defense. But Ola has a leverage that it is based in mountains, forests, where drone strikes, where the effectiveness is limited. Fano fighters are based in town cities. Right now they are in town cities. They withdrew from some town cities, 6 town cities. Now they are in control of remaining towns. And it is difficult for them to protect themselves by being in these open areas. They can easily be hit, precisely hit. Ethiopian Air Force has this capability of precisely hitting vehicles of Fano fighters from the air using TB2 Turkish drones. So it means Fano's test begins. This test, TDF failed when these drone strikes began. When TB2s started drone strikes in 2021, Tigray forces were unable to move. Their advancing convoys were precisely hit in Afar, then in Amhara. They retreated. Fano fighters very vulnerable to these drone strikes. They'll have to change their strategies. Either they'll have to avoid moving in the open, or they'll have to withdraw from main and smaller town cities. Heavy fighting ongoing for the control of Silam and Bure. Since yesterday, I think. Bure last night was under Fano control, and there were heavy clashes there. Both sides suffered losses. Fano can counter these offensives, but problem is that drone strikes cannot be countered. Fano has no defense. Let's see how Fano counters the threat of drone strikes in Gojam. No drone strikes in Gondar. Gondar is away from Varaga, maybe that is why ground control station is more than 200, even 300 kilometers away from Gondar in Valaga. So, no drone strikes there. But Gojam, I think more drone strikes will be conducted in Gojam. Thanks for watching.